Feminist film theory is defined by the use of the female characters in a film as a way to reflect how society often criticizes and scrutinizes women. Oftentimes, female characters lack complexity and might only be inserted in a movie as a way to develop the male characters. Although Gone Girl by David Fincher seems to break out of this narrative by giving the female protagonist time to tell her side of the story, the audience is kept in the dark as they get to judge what part of the story she is telling is the truth and what isn't. Whereas in Vertigo by Alfred Hitchcock, the two recurring female characters' only purpose is served is to be some kind of love interest of the protagonist, the ex-detective Scotty, whether it be a former or current connection. The psychological thriller aspect of both movies creates an environment to intentionally bring the audience in and make them question the difference between reality and illusion, as well as challenging the perceptions of truth, loyalty, and the darker aspects of love. This is further developed through the use of the filmmaker's intentions of how a facade and the reality portray real-world aspects of human relationships through the narrative structure of the films and cinematography to highlight how psychological thrillers use female characters to portray desire and subversion in relationships. Through this focus, the movies reflect the social context of male and female relationships and how they interact based on the historical context of the films. Through the filmmaker's intentions, the director highlights different details they deem important for the audience to notice and delve into. Both stories deal with the theme of obsession and identity, in which characters in the respective stories, specifically the female characters, portray themselves to be someone they are not, whether it be a heightened version of themselves or a whole new identity. This is done to trick other characters in the story into an illusion. In Gone Girl, Fincher illustrates how imperfect marriages truly are through the facade played out by our own narcissistic projections of ourselves. This creates the dynamic that both characters are actively changing who they are and how they act to please others. The feminist film movement is intertwined throughout this film as Amy Dunn, the female protagonist, eventually grows tired of the facade at play. When she mysteriously goes missing, a series of twists and turns follow to set up suspense. The narrative structure of this film often relies on the eyes of the media and their perception of the case. Nick, the husband, goes from being hated by the public as it is revealed he has cheated on his missing pregnant wife to then gaining their sympathy after coming clean. However, even when using the media to turn around other people's perspective of him, he continues to play a part, emphasizing the facade and made-up versions of ourselves to please others. Amy, being a complex character, is able to break out of the stereotypical female character. Once it is revealed that she is alive and her husband didn't kill her, her cool girl monologue reflects the societal standards set for women in relationships. She explains how she changed herself to be someone's dream girl rather than be herself. Since this film takes place in the 21st century, Amy is able to try and walk away from the relationship that no longer serves her, even if it is done in a grueling and abnormal way. However, in Vertigo, Hitchcock intrigues the audience by building up a scheme that the audience later learns is a trap for the protagonist, Scotty. His intention is ultimately to portray a narrative that both excites and unsettles the audience. The film has elements of the feminist film theory since it often uses femininity solely as an object of desire. Vertigo illustrates the use of male gaze in film as it portrays the male obsession and objectification of women. Scotty only falls in love with the idea of Madeline, the made-up character created to deceive him rather than her real personality. In the second half of the movie, once both the audience and Scotty believe that Madeline is dead and that her fated prophecy was fulfilled, the real version of Madeline appears, Judy. Hitchcock portrays the love that Scotty still has for Madeline as a projection onto Judy, changing her to reflect the hoax. Through this, Scotty rejects the idea that Judy is her own different person than that of Madeline, highlighting how both of these characters have now become slaves to the image of Madeline, someone who doesn't even exist. The independent entity of any of the female characters throughout the film are not given any importance, further conveying their lack of character complexity. This can be indicative of the filmmaker's intention that the life of a man is more important than the life of a woman. This is furthermore proved when both versions of the desired character die, Madeline and Judy, again establishing the primordiality of masculinity. Even Midge, Scotty's best friend and ex-fiancée, plays a part in the narrative aspect of the film as she often scrutinizes and judges Scotty for his actions towards Madeline and Judy, knowing that it is not good for him to be invested in this scheme after how his last case resulted. Similar to the media in Gone Girl, they both play an outsider's perspective on the situation at hand, oftentimes giving commentary on the occasion. Although Amy Dunn does not meet her original plan of killing herself once running away, unlike the fate of the female protagonist in Vertigo, she keeps her husband captive in the relationship with her in power, again illustrating her breaking out of old ways of thinking where female characters cannot be complex and get what they want. In these ways, filmmakers show how the social context of the media and perspective can impact relationships as well as the historical context of the time periods affecting said relationships and how they interact with one another. Cinematography in psychological thrillers often highlights the ambience and tone of a film through framing and coloring. Vertigo utilizes intricate camera movements to create a sense of disorientation and psychological unease. Hitchcock's innovative use of the dolly zoom technique, also known as the vertigo effect, adds a distinctive visual element that enhances the film's exploration of obsession and manipulation. Through framing, Hitchcock applies a rule that is prevalent throughout the film, in which any movement from left to right is the truth and from right to left is a lie. The opening shot is proof of this as Scotty runs into the frame from right, signifying that he is chasing a lie, something unattainable as it is unnatural. For most of the film, Scotty is stuck on the right side of the frame, symbolizing his inability to accept failure. The diegesis plays into the feminist film theory as it forces the audience to judge and evaluate Madeline, whereas the stalker and the audience itself is not judged for doing so. However, Midge is seen as the voice of reason as she comes from the left side and speaks the truth to Scotty. Even the way Elster is framed, in which he eventually steps into a back room that resembles a small stage under his feet to convey his lie, follows this technique. Throughout the relationship between Scotty and Madeline, Scotty is often seen pushing her into the left side of the frame, once he becomes more aware of her lies. One specific moment that highlights this is when they kiss, and the camera spins in a counterclockwise direction, going from right, in the lie, to the left, as they appear in the stables to portray the truth of the story. A particular scene in Gone Girl that focuses and highlights the importance of framing is the scene in which Amy is coming back home to Nick. With the media playing a substantial part in the subplot of the film, we see here how the camera is framed in order to showcase their importance as they capture this moment. By using a high and wide angle shot, the media occupies a daunting portion of the frame as opposed to the tiny part that Nick and Amy occupy. This scene also highlights the performativity illustrated by the feminist film theory in which women are meant to perform, as Amy falls into Nick's arms in a picture-perfect manner. This film also contains repeated frames and blocking throughout the film to showcase a change in perspective and a reflection of the characters onto others. These reflections allow the audience to recognize that the characters are still stuck in the same place even after the events that occur throughout. Through framing, the social context of the films is a reflection of how the characters move and interact to convey a specific feeling towards the audience, as well as characters inside the film. The use of color in films allows for the expression of a tone and a feeling to influence the audience. Psychological thrillers oftentimes exaggerate their use of color to accentuate symbolism and character traits. In Vertigo, green is frequently associated with something sinister and mysterious, something that Scotty sees Madeline as when first meeting, as her green dress juxtaposes the red wallpaper in the room. After she jumps in the bay, the audience realizes that Scotty has become more admirable of her now that he is wearing a green sweater, so as to assimilate to Madeline's life to solve her mystery. In this scene, she instead wears the color red, a color that is on the opposite side of green on the color wheel, highlighting the feeling of tension, warning the trouble that Scotty is about to face. Similar to her green car that Scotty follows, later juxtaposing his bright red front door. Her presence is again a reflection of the feminist film theory, as Madeline only serves as a way to get Scotty's attention rather than being her own person. The coloring in Gone Girl emphasizes a sleek and polished aesthetic, with a cool color palette full of somber blues, murky greens, and sickly yellows. The film creates an atmosphere of detachment and unease. This is conveyed in one of the earlier scenes where Nick is at the bar with his sister and playing the game of life. Once we get a close-up shot of the spinning rainbow wheel, it is now portrayed as dull hues, reflecting his own life and marriage. However, the gray tones throughout the film allow for the kill scene to be more poignant, as the explosion of red onto white and light colors reflect the darkness of the character. Although the audience might have been starved for color, now that they have it, it is not gratifying but rather terrifying and traumatic. Through this, the feminist film theory recognizes the resistance of stereotypical female characters and gives the audience not someone to admire but to make the villain, while also displaying their human qualities. The social context of the films are important, as the audience is able to recognize the value of women being able to address the problems in the narrative of their own relationships for themselves, like in Gone Girl, rather than merely playing a part in someone else's scheme only to meet a dreaded doom, as seen in Vertigo.